The rain hammered against the windows of our small cottage in the Cotswolds, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. For 20 years, Ingrid and I had built a life here, a life I believed was filled with love and mutual respect. I'm Quentin, and until recently I was a content, if somewhat unremarkable, IT specialist. Ingrid, with her fiery red hair and equally fiery spirit, was everything I wasn't: outgoing, adventurous, and seemingly devoted to me. I'm 46 now, and the thought of starting over is terrifying. It started subtly, a nagging feeling that something was off. Ingrid, usually so effusive and talkative, became withdrawn. Her phone, once an open book, was now guarded like a state secret. She'd snap it shut if I entered the room, her face flushed with a guilt I couldn't explain. I chalked it up to stress at work. She was a project manager for a construction firm and had been working long hours on a new development. But the feeling persisted, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. One evening I decided to surprise Ingrid with dinner. I left work early, picked up her favorite flowers, lilies. Their scent always reminded me of our early days, and drove home, eager to see her reaction. As I unlocked the front door, I heard voices, muffled but distinct, coming from the bedroom. Ingrid's voice, laced with a tenderness I hadn't heard in months, and another voice, a man's, low and husky. My blood turned to ice. I stood frozen, the lilies clutched in my hand, as the reality crashed down on me. Ingrid was cheating. The woman I had loved, trusted, and built my life with was betraying me in the most intimate way imaginable. I pushed the door open. The scene that greeted me was like a punch to the gut. Ingrid was in bed with a man I vaguely recognized. He was tall, athletic, with a smirking face that seemed to mock my very existence. I later learned his name was Alaric, a contractor from her firm. They both stared at me, their faces a mixture of shock and something akin to annoyance, as if I had interrupted something important. Ingrid stammered, "Quentin, it's not what you think." "Not what I think," I repeated, my voice trembling. "I'm standing here watching you in bed with another man. What exactly am I supposed to think, Ingrid?" I wanted to scream, to unleash the rage that was building inside me, but all I could manage was a pathetic whimper. Alaric, the smug bastard, simply smirked and began to get dressed, not even bothering to apologize. Ingrid finally found her voice, a defensive edge creeping into it. "It just happened, Quentin. It didn't mean anything." Her words were like a knife twisting in my heart. "Didn't mean anything. You're in my bed with another man, and it didn't mean anything." I dropped the lilies, their petals scattering across the floor like fallen hopes. I turned and walked out, unable to bear another second in that room. I drove aimlessly for hours, the rain blurring the road ahead, my mind a whirlwind of confusion, anger, and despair. How could she do this to me? What had I done to deserve this? I spent the night in a cheap motel, the sterile room a stark contrast to the warm, familiar comfort of my home. Sleep was impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ingrid and Alaric in bed, their betrayal replaying in my mind like a broken record. The next morning I returned to the cottage, my heart heavy with dread. Ingrid was waiting for me, her eyes red and swollen. "Quentin, please let me explain," she pleaded. I listened numbly as she spun a tale of loneliness, of feeling neglected, of needing something more. She claimed that Alaric had swept her off her feet, that it was just a momentary lapse in judgment. But I saw no remorse in her eyes, only a desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "I still love you, Quentin," she said, her voice cracking. "Please give me another chance." But the trust was gone, shattered beyond repair. The image of her with Alaric was seared into my brain, poisoning every memory we had shared. I couldn't forgive her, not this time. "I'm sorry, Ingrid," I said, my voice flat. "It's over," she broke down, sobbing uncontrollably, begging me to reconsider. But I was resolute. I had spent 20 years of my life with this woman, and she had thrown it all away for a fleeting moment of passion. I couldn't stay, not with the constant reminder of her betrayal hanging over my head. I moved into the spare room, and we lived like strangers in our own home, the silence broken only by the occasional sob or the slamming of a door. I started the process of divorce, the legal papers a cold, clinical representation of the emotional devastation I was feeling. As I sorted through our belongings, dividing our lives into neat little piles, I stumbled upon something that made my blood run cold all over again. It was a small, velvet box hidden in the back of Ingrid's closet. Inside, nestled on a bed of satin, was a diamond ring, far more extravagant than the simple band I had given her 20 years ago. There was also a note. To my darling Ingrid, I can't wait to spend the rest of our lives together. All my love, Alaric. So it wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment. It was an affair, a planned betrayal, a complete disregard for our marriage. The rage I had suppressed for so long finally erupted. I stormed into the living room where Ingrid was sitting, staring blankly at the television. "What is this?" I demanded, shoving the box in her face. She paled, her eyes widening in panic. "I can explain," she stammered. "Explain. Explain how you've been planning to leave me for this Alaric all along. Explain how you could lie to my face and pretend that it was just a mistake." She tried to deny it, to claim that Alaric had given her the ring as a promise for the future, but I wasn't buying it. The truth was written all over her face, a mask of guilt and deceit. That night I couldn't sleep. The betrayal had cut me deeper than I thought possible. But amidst the pain and anger, a new emotion began to emerge, a burning desire for revenge. I wanted Ingrid and Alaric to suffer as I had suffered, to feel the same gut-wrenching pain they had inflicted on me. I started by digging into Alaric's background. I hired a private investigator, a gruff, no-nonsense woman named Bronwyn, to uncover his secrets. It didn't take long. Alaric, it turned out, was a serial cheater, a womanizer who had left a trail of broken hearts and shattered marriages in his wake. He was also deeply in debt, owing money to some shady individuals. Armed with this information, I hatched a plan. I contacted Alaric's wife, a kind, unassuming woman named Gwyneth, and told her everything. At first, she refused to believe me, but I showed her the evidence, the emails, the text messages, the photos. Finally, the truth dawned on her, and she was devastated. Together, we decided to expose Alaric for the lying, cheating scumbag he was. Gwyneth confronted Alaric at his workplace, in front of his colleagues and clients. She laid bare his infidelities, his financial troubles, and his complete lack of moral character. The scene was explosive, and Alaric was humiliated, his reputation ruined. He was fired from his job and ostracized by his friends and family. Meanwhile, I turned my attention to Ingrid. I knew that she was deeply invested in her career, that her professional success was a source of pride and validation. So I decided to target her where it would hurt the most, her job. I anonymously contacted Ingrid's boss, providing him with evidence of her affair with Alaric, a contractor who had been working on one of the company's major projects. I also pointed out that their relationship had created a conflict of interest, potentially jeopardizing the project's success. The company, fearing a scandal, launched an internal investigation. Ingrid was suspended, and her future with the firm was uncertain. Watching Ingrid and Alaric's lives crumble around them gave me a perverse sense of satisfaction. It wasn't enough to erase the pain they had caused me, but it was a start. I wanted them to understand the consequences of their actions, to feel the weight of their betrayal. But as I watched them suffer, I realized that revenge wasn't the answer. It didn't bring me peace. It didn't heal my wounds. It only perpetuated the cycle of pain. I was becoming the very thing I despised, a vengeful, bitter person consumed by anger. I decided to change course. I dropped the divorce proceedings and asked Ingrid to talk. We sat down, not as enemies, but as two people who had once loved each other deeply. I told her that I couldn't forgive her, but that I didn't want to spend the rest of my life consumed by hatred. I proposed a separation, a clean break that would allow us both to move on with our lives. Ingrid, to my surprise, agreed. She seemed relieved, as if she had been carrying a burden of guilt for far too long. We sold the cottage and divided the assets fairly. I moved to a small apartment in Bristol, a city I had always dreamed of living in. I spent the next few months focusing on myself, rediscovering my passions and building a new life. I took up photography, exploring the city's hidden corners and capturing its vibrant energy. I joined a hiking club, venturing into the surrounding countryside and marveling at the beauty of nature. I even started dating again, cautiously opening myself up to the possibility of love. One day, I received a letter from Ingrid. She wrote that she had left Alaric, that their relationship had been a disaster from the start. She was now working as a waitress in a small town in Wales, trying to rebuild her life. She apologized for the pain she had caused me and wished me well. I didn't feel any sense of triumph or vindication. I simply felt a sense of closure, of finally being able to put the past behind me. Ingrid's betrayal had been a devastating experience, but it had also been a catalyst for change. It had forced me to confront my own vulnerabilities, to redefine my values, and to create a new life that was more authentic and fulfilling. I never saw Ingrid again, but I often thought about her, wondering if she had found happiness. I hoped that she had learned from her mistakes and that she was finally living a life of honesty and integrity. As for me, I had found peace, not in revenge, but in forgiveness and self-discovery. The rain still falls on the Cotswolds, but it no longer echoes the storm within me. I am Quentin, and I am finally free. Years passed. I built a good life for myself in Bristol. My photography hobby turned into a part-time job, and I even had a small exhibition. I met a wonderful woman named Alaric, a potter with a kind heart and a gentle spirit. We fell in love slowly and surely and eventually got married. Life felt good, complete. Then one cold December evening I received a phone call. It was from a hospital in Wales. Ingrid had been in a car accident. She was asking for me. The drive to Wales was long and filled with a strange mix of emotions. I hadn't seen Ingrid in over a decade. What would I say? What would she say? Was I even the right person to be there? When I arrived at the hospital, a nurse led me to Ingrid's room. She looked frail, pale, and much older than I remembered. But her eyes, those fiery green eyes, still held a spark of the woman I had once loved. "Quentin," she whispered, her voice weak. "Thank you for coming." I sat down beside her bed, taking her hand. It felt strange, yet familiar. "How are you feeling?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Not good," she replied, a faint smile gracing her lips. "But I wanted to see you one last time." We talked for hours about the past, about our mistakes, about the lessons we had learned. She told me that leaving Alaric was the best decision she had ever made. He had been abusive and controlling, and she had finally found the strength to break free. She had worked hard to rebuild her life, to atone for her past sins. She had found solace in helping others, volunteering at a local animal shelter and working with underprivileged children. "I know I hurt you deeply, Quentin," she said, her eyes filled with tears. "And I'm so sorry. I hope that one day you can truly forgive me." I looked at her, at the pain and regret etched on her face, and I realized that I had already forgiven her. Not completely, perhaps, but enough to let go of the anger and resentment that had haunted me for so long. "I forgive you, Ingrid," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "I truly do." She closed her eyes, a peaceful expression on her face. "Thank you, Quentin," she whispered. "That means more than you know." She passed away peacefully a few hours later with me by her side. I stayed in Wales for her funeral, offering my condolences to her family and friends. It was a somber occasion, but also a celebration of a life that had been transformed by hardship and redemption. As I drove back to Bristol, I felt a profound sense of peace. Ingrid's death had brought closure to a chapter of my life that had been filled with pain and betrayal. I had learned that revenge is a hollow victory, that forgiveness is the only path to true healing, and that even the deepest wounds can be healed with time and compassion. I am Quentin, and I am finally at peace. Alaric was waiting for me when I got home, her warm embrace a comforting balm to my weary soul. I told her everything about Ingrid, about the accident, about the forgiveness I had finally found. She listened patiently, offering words of comfort and understanding. "You're a good man, Quentin," she said, her eyes filled with love. "You have a big heart and you're capable of great compassion." I held her close, grateful for her love and support. I knew that I was lucky to have found her, a woman who loved me for who I was, flaws and all. With Alaric by my side, I knew that I could face whatever the future held with courage, hope, and an open heart. Life is a journey, filled with both joy and sorrow, love and loss. It is not always easy, but it is always worth living. And sometimes the greatest tragedies can lead to the greatest transformations. I am Quentin, and I am a testament to the power of forgiveness, the resilience of the human spirit, and the enduring strength of love.